Good morning, CHD. It is Sunday, the 10th of August, 2025. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President and CEO of Children's Health Defence, and myself, Polly Tommey. Right, Mary?
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's get on with the first one. It's Associated Press, and the headline is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pulls $500 million in funding for vaccine development. The HHS says it will cancel contracts and pull funding for some vaccines that are being developed to fight respiratory viruses like COVID-19 and the flu. 22 projects totaling $500 million to develop these vaccines using mRNA technology will be halted. I'm just going to go on to the Defender article on this by Brenda Belletti. The headline here, it's a step in the right direction. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. cancels $500 million contract with these mRNA vaccines. Quote here, the data show these vaccines fail to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and flu. This is US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying this. Supporters of mRNA technology warn of the future pandemic unpreparedness, while others called for stronger action against the product. And Mary, I just want to say before, I think it's great. I think it is a step in the right direction. So I agree with that. I'm slightly concerned about the line. He says, we're shifting that funding towards safer, broader vaccine platforms that remain effective. I'm concerned about that line. We don't have an effective, safe vaccine.
Well, yeah, this is not saying, that they're getting rid of all pandemic-related vaccines, nor is this by any means getting rid of all of the money that has gone to pharma for vaccine mRNA development. But it still is a step in the right direction, right? So it's an interesting article that does have, people like Sasha Latipova and Meryl Nass pointing out that there's still a lot of money going towards mRNA development. This is not an abandonment of this platform, which we think at the moment is probably appropriate because we know that these shots have been deadly and very injurious on a scale never before seen. They're not vaccines, they're gene therapies. So this is almost more a repositioning than a real sort of termination. But it's definitely a step in the right direction to sort of make the world aware that these shots are not effective. They have been deadly and injurious, which it doesn't say, but it's somewhat implicit, and that we should be redirecting money towards other things. So it's not, this is a reform. It's not a radical change, but it's definitely a signal to the pharmaceutical industry and to the biomedical world. And needless to say, they're not very happy. So I watched one recent sort of commentator, Dr. Paul Offit going out and saying, this is the end of science and how dare he? And, oh my God, the next pandemic, we're going to be totally unprepared, et cetera. To be expected.
Yeah, the internet is blowing up with people that are not happy. I'm seeing that as well. Back in the Defender, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ends financial incentives for hospitals that report staff vaccination rates. The move repeals a Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services inpatient payment policy created during the Biden administration that tied hospital reimbursement to COVID-19 vaccination. Children's Health Defence CEO Mary Holland said that she hopes HHS looks into financial incentives for pediatricians tied to childhood vaccination rates. Yes, amen, Mary. Absolutely. Please.
Yeah, well, I know this is a theme that you and I and all of us care deeply about. But this is exciting. I mean, this is Secretary Kennedy saying that the only thing that doctors should be concerned about is the well-being of the individual patient. They should absolutely not be incentivized by a population-based financial incentive that could harm the individual. That's just not the way medicine should be practiced. And what's also exciting here is that there's sort of notations in this article about how, having Bobby Kennedy as Secretary of Health and Human Services is not a fluke. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's because the public is demanding medical freedom, transparency, an end to government overreach. And this does reflect a sort of increasing momentum towards medical decentralization and independent decision-making and away from kind of command and control policies.
Okay, Brownson Institute in the Defender here. The biggest losers are American children, AAP. We're going to be talking about the AAP. It's the American Academy of Pediatrics. They paved the way for rising rates of chronic illness in U.S. children for decades. The agency's top 10 priorities list promotes mandated medicalization, but ignores diet and physical activity. And the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, are funded by sources including Moderna, Merck, Sanofi, GlaxoSmithKline, Eli Lilly, and other pharmaceutical companies. I mean, you can't get much darker than that, really, Mary.
This is an excellent piece by Dr. David Bell in Brownstone. And David Bell worked at WHO. He kind of, sees things from what I think is a really important perspective. And he's like, this is just capitalism without any morals, that there are 67,000 members of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And, they were behind masks, they were behind COVID shots for kids with no basis whatsoever. And they are just this enabler. And what they're doing is basically creating clients for life, right? If you injure kids with vaccines, with allergies, diabetes, autism, ADHD early in life, you will have clients for life. And they basically, this is an article in response to the AAP's recent policy to have no non-medical exemptions to vaccines, i.e. take any parental, religious, cultural, other decision-making authority away from parents and give it to these doctors. The article points out that they say nothing about the real issues around the chronic health epidemic for children, obesity, autism. There's nothing about that. And he says, basically you either have to assume that AAP just thinks it should make all decisions for children's health, or you have to think that they just are interested in making money and they're doing this for their pharmaceutical sponsors, or they just are going with the flow and they're not thinking at all. None of those are very good options. I think people will just continue to leave these pediatric practices. And frankly, Polly, I hope that more and more pediatricians will leave the AAP. These are decisions that obviously are not in the interest of children.
Completely agree. Michael Nevadakis in the Defender. Vaccination rates hit record-breaking low for 3 years in a row as religious exemptions reach record high. The CDC said the decision to vaccinate is a personal one. Parents should consult their healthcare providers on options for their families. Well, I personally do not recommend that you go to healthcare providers, Mary. I mean, these are the people, again, the pediatricians that are being incentivized to vaccinate. So it's a conflict of interest there. There's a lot of ways to do your research.
Yeah, that's true. But this is interesting, Polly. This is the third year in a row of declining vaccination rates. The rates of DPT and MMR uptake are still in the 90% area, but religious exemptions have increased in 36 states, according to this. What's interesting also is that it says that homeschooled children are not categorized, and at least half of homeschooled children are probably unvaccinated. Homeschooled children are now 7% of all children in school. So I think this is very, this is really important. And I do believe that when you see this kind of data of every year, the vaccination rates are decreasing, we will see an improvement in health. We're going to see fewer injuries from vaccines. So I'm hoping that this is really showing up now at a population level in terms of improvements in health.
Okay, US Right to Know in the Defender. World Health Organization Foundation relies heavily on anonymous donors, sparking concerns about conflicts of interest. The majority of donations to the World Health Organization Foundation are not publicly disclosed, including some gifts as big as $11 million. Analysis found this information. A spokesperson said the foundation vets all anonymous donors. Yet the World Health Organization's growing dependence on dark money raises concerns about the level of outside influence in setting public health priorities. I think it's great, Mary, that we are collectively starting to expose these organizations. AAP, World Health Organization.
Yeah, it is great. This is a piece that comes from US Right to Know. They do excellent journalism. And, apparently in 2023, Polly, 80% of the donations to the World Health Organization Foundation were anonymous, 80%. Of course, that's corporate money, and they're this is pay to play. They are giving money for a particular outcome that they're looking for. So yeah, it's great that people are, getting this information. We never got this before, Polly. So this is good.
It's exposing them. Are pharma lobbyists behind Vinay Prasad's oust from the FDA? Evidence suggests that some journalists who publicly attacked Prasad and called for his oust having ties to Sarah Epta Therapeutics, maker of the drug that Prasad moved to pull from the market last month. So he tried to take something off the market and then suddenly he's gone.
Correct.
Is that what we're hearing?
Exactly. Yeah.
It does also sound, Mary, like a bit of a message to other people, could it not be?
Oh, 100%. This is troubling, definitely troubling. So apparently 3 people died on this Sarepta drug, which cost over $3 million a year, made by this small biomedical firm. And then Prasad was savagely attacked as being a Bernie Sanders supporter, being not ideologically aligned with President Trump. He was savaged by this online social media person, Laura Loomer, who seems close to President Trump. And also there was an op-ed against him in the Wall Street Journal, but timed perfectly to cover this insult from Sarepta's perspective. And as soon as he said, yes, I'm going to leave, I don't want to deflect from the important work that FDA is doing, the stocks rose for biomed. So I think you're right. It looks to be, to me, Polly, a coordinated attack that was really driven by money, but sort of given an ideological camouflage. And it is sending a message to other people at FDA. You mess with pharma, we'll come after you.
Trial site news in the Defender. Deceitful propaganda stunt. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. breaks down Danish study on autism and aluminum in vaccines. U.S. Health Secretary laid out the flaws in the study, hailed by the media as proof of aluminum safety. A closer look reveals a study so deeply flawed, it functions not as science, but as deceitful propaganda stunt by the pharmaceutical industry. And there's just one more from Suzanne Burdick in the Defender. Danish researcher responds to RFK Jr.'s call to retract the deeply flawed aluminum study. The lead author of a controversial study on aluminum in vaccines responded this week to a call by U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for the study to be retracted. The lead author categorically denies any deceit is involved. I'm glad this story is not going dead. It's super important we keep this story right up.
If you read one article this week, read this piece by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that was first published in Trial Site News, which is a sort of a blog for the pharmaceutical industry. And it is vintage Bobby Kennedy. It's incredibly well written. It's very hard hitting. And he says, not only is it so deeply flawed to be deceitful, it was meticulously designed not to find harm. He goes through how they excluded the kids who died under age 2. They excluded the kids with respiratory infections. They threw out 34,000 plus records of the kids with the highest aluminum exposure, as if that was implausible. And that's exactly what American kids get. He called it absurd. And then he says, their own supplementary data are a devastating indictment of aluminum-containing vaccines. The Annals of Internal Medicine should retract this study. We need independent research grounded in full transparency, methodological integrity, and the courage to confront inconvenient truths. So it's a great calling out of corrupt corporate scientism. It was not science. And then this alleged rebuttal by FID, James Lyons Weiler and Chris Exley, they point out he doesn't refute what Bobby Kennedy said at all. He just restates, there's no deceit, this is good science, but it's vapid. There's nothing to it. So this was exciting. Again, Polly, like what you're saying, it's all coming to the surface. People are able to see, in some ways for the first time, pretty clearly, like, oh my gosh, they published this completely bogus study. Their own data shows that it was a fake and a fraud. And the HHS secretary is calling it out. It's really nice.
Yeah, good stuff. Suzanne Burdick in the Defender. Senator Ron Johnson prods the DOD for answers on back pay owed to service members ousted for refusing COVID vaccines. The US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth received a letter from Senator Ron Johnson where Johnson cited a Daily Caller article that exposed how some veterans who refused the COVID-19 shot still haven't received back pay, despite an executive order President Donald Trump signed in January. I'm so glad, again, that's been brought up to the front.
Yeah, it's being exposed. So the executive order is not self-executing. So important lawsuits are being brought on behalf of people in the military who were dismissed. Some of them can't rejoin, even though that seems to be an open door. So this is important. 8,700 service members were dismissed during COVID for refusal to take the COVID shots. So I'm glad we're covering that. I'm glad that Senator Johnson's on it.
I am as well. And I was hearing from a service member recently that said, if you went and got a job after you were dismissed, which most people would have had to do to just survive, then no back pay for you because you earned money. Like, it's criminal.
Yeah, it's not there yet.
Michael Nevadakis in The Defender, the DOJ settles lawsuit against Biden administration over COVID vaccine mandates for federal workers. This settlement with Feds for Freedom requires the government to expunge the COVID-19 vaccine status, records of federal workers, and prohibits discrimination based on vaccine status. Feds for Freedom, a non-profit representing 6,000 federal workers, sued the Biden administration in December 2021 after President Joe Biden signed an executive order mandating the vaccines for federal employees and contractors.
It's great to see that there's a settlement. So what this settlement calls for is to expunge records of the COVID-19 vaccination status. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of vaccination status going forward, which is very important. It doesn't tell us what the financial arrangements were or whether people were instated. It doesn't tell us about back pay. The commentators in this article say this is tacit acknowledgement of the harm caused. It's a quiet admission of wrongdoing. I wish that were a lot more explicit, Polly. It's not an open admission that what the Biden administration did in mandating this was unconstitutional, which it was in our view. This is 6,000 federal. This is on behalf of 6,000 federal workers who, were terminated because of their decisions. And this Feds for Freedom did really make a difference because in January 2022, because of their lawsuit, they did obtain a nationwide injunction that paused the mandate for federal workers, which was really important. Probably a lot of people had already been vaccinated by then. This is, again, a step in the right direction. It's inadequate, Polly. It's definitely not enough. We need a lot more truth telling to get us to where we need to be so that this doesn't happen again. But it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Brenda Belletti, California hospital concealed evidence linking catastrophic surge in stillbirths to COVID vaccines. This is a lawsuit alleging this. The lawsuit filed last week in a California Superior Court also accuses the hospital of retaliating against whistleblower Michelle Spencer after she made public an internal hospital email that revealed the skyrocketing rate.
This is a lawsuit that we, Children's Health Defense, are financing. And I am very excited that this case is moving forward. Michelle Spencer was in Vax 3, Polly. You remember her mother died from a hospital protocol. She's a nurse on a ward. She continues to be there for a maternity ward for babies being born. And what she observed was this really genuinely chilling memo that is quoted in the article of, oh, gee, we've got, over 20 stillbirths this month. It's like last month. We're expecting more. And it was very obvious that these stillbirths were happening to the mothers, the pregnant women, that they were injecting with the COVID-19 vaccines, and the hospital's making money on the COVID-19 vaccinations. Again, a conflict of interest. So they explicitly ignored the connection. They were required to be giving information to health regulatory bodies, which they didn't do. And when Michelle called them out on this, they did retaliate against her and didn't give her the bonus that she was due by virtue of her length of service. So this is a case that we really hope will expose what was going on in the hospitals. And as the attorney for the case, Greg Glazer, with whom we've worked extensively over the past few years, he says the truth does set you free, and only then can we begin to heal. And I believe that so deeply, Polly. We have not yet really truly confronted the truth of what happened in COVID. All of the things that we've done, Vax3 and our articles and CHDTV, we have been, sounding the alarm. But as a country, there are still, in fact, based on Bobby Kennedy's decision to stop $500 million worth of mRNA vaccine development, the official narrative, oh, how can he do that? Because the vaccines stopped the pandemic. They slowed down the pandemic. Well, from our perspective, that's absolutely false. They actually abetted the pandemic, and that's what science shows us to date. But so we still, as a country, have not reckoned with what we just lived through for several years. And if we don't, I really genuinely fear it will happen again. So anyway, I think this is, again, a step in the right direction.
It is. And just so everybody knows, Michelle Spencer will be coming on Good Morning CHDTV tomorrow morning. So we'll hear directly from her.
Excellent. That's great.
Okay. Brenda Belletti, defender. Federal court dismisses case against LA schools' COVID vaccine mandates for employees. The court ruled that vaccine mandates are constitutional if public health, regardless of whether a vaccine prevents transmission or provides immunity. Dissenting judges said the ruling comes perilously close to giving the government carte blanche to require medical treatment.
Yeah, this is a big deal, Polly. So you'll remember that our friends, Leslie Manookian at Health Freedom Defense Fund, they won a really important judgment at the trial court level, federal trial court in California, that the LAUSD teachers could not be compelled to take the COVID shot because the case law, the Supreme Court precedent Jacobson versus Massachusetts, says the vaccine is legitimate if it stops transmission. If it doesn't stop transmission, it's not really a vaccine. So Jacobson doesn't really apply. So we were pretty thrilled with that decision that seemed to put a question about COVID shots and a question about all the vaccines that don't stop transmission, which are a lot of them, Polly. That was the Ninth Circuit that thought that no transmission, Jacobson doesn't apply. The trial court had said, oh, Jacobson, we just dismissed this. And there were some people that wanted to say that the case was just moot because the mandate was off. They said, no, it's not moot, but so long as the public health authorities thought that there was, there could be a reason to mandate this, it's all good. If they think it could help an individual, whether, with symptom reduction, even if it doesn't stop transmission, doesn't stop you from getting the disease, if some health official somewhere said it's a good idea, you can go with that. And so this is a really bad decision from our perspective. It literally actually lowers the standard from what it is, that the government has to have a reasonable, cogent belief that these products actually do stop the spread. So my best guess, Polly, is that this case will petition the Supreme Court for review. This is going towards, we have to have a reckoning, Polly. We have to stop this from ever happening again. And to do that, we actually have to change the laws. And this Jacobson versus Massachusetts Supreme Court decision from 1905 about a smallpox epidemic that imposed a mandate on adults, not children, at the cost of a $5 fine. That's it. If you didn't comply, that decision is now being used to throw people out of work, force them to take medication they don't want, allowing experimental shots, allowing gene therapies to be called vaccines, allowing something to be called a vaccine that doesn't stop transmission. It's just gotten so out there that, this is probably a path towards, perhaps getting the Supreme Court to look at this, because this is a really bad decision.
Okay, thank you. Brenda Belletti, defender. Chilling decision. Judge rules against a firefighter injured by COVID vaccine after employee rejected medical exemption. A federal judge ruled that New York firefighter O'Brien Pastrana, who experiences a severe heart injury after his second COVID-19 vaccine, was not entitled to financial compensation. Pastrana's employee denied his request for a medical exemption based on the firefighter's severe reaction to his first dose.
This is New York, Polly. And again, this lawsuit and this genuinely chilling decision from this court really shows us how cruel and inhuman the law has become. So this guy goes and gets his first dose. He has a severe adverse reaction. And the doctor at the ER says, this is your reaction to a COVID shot. And and the firefighters of New York don't accept that medical exemption. Only if you can prove to us you have an allergy. I mean, this is crazy. This guy has had like a heart condition, and he needs his job, right? People come to rely on their jobs. And so, he takes the second shot, and he's completely disabled. He basically can't function properly anymore at all. And the court says, "Oh, too bad. You could have gone and found a different job." They won't take his medical exemption, and then he takes the shot and he's injured. He was obviously coerced to take the second shot because they didn't grant a legitimate medical exemption. And again, Sujata Gibson, one of the attorneys working on this case, who we work with often, says, Jacobson itself, Polly, this 1905 Supreme Court decision says there must be medical exemptions. The right to life is fundamental. It is cruel and inhuman in the last degree to force somebody that is medically vulnerable to take a product that could end their life, which is exactly what happened here. This goes against even Jacobson from 1905. So, we have got to keep pushing on this. COVID is not over. It's not over until we've fully told the truth and we've put in place safeguards so that this doesn't happen again. And we're not there yet.
HR Law Canada reported on this article here. COVID-19 vaccine mandate at Aurelia Soldiers Memorial Hospital upheld despite nurses' termination grievances. An Ontario arbitrator has ruled the mandatory vaccination policy was reasonable, even though it led to the termination of 8 nurses who refused to get vaccinated.
Very similar to what we just read from the Ninth Circuit. Same thing. Canada in general is, we know, is even worse than the United States.
Suzanne Burdick, no place in our community. Santa Cruz residents sue county over AT&T cell tower. So this is Santa Cruz in California, and the residents want the court to withdraw the approval of a 140-foot cell tower. They allege county officials illegally approved. Children's Health Defense is supporting the residents through its Stop 5G initiative. Good. I'm glad we are doing that.
So we're working with local communities on cell tower placement, and this cell tower will cause health issues because it's too close to people's homes. It also poses in California, that's very dry, wildfire risks. It's also within a range of 1,000 feet of another cell tower. So there's just so much that needs to be done to regulate this, to ensure that it is safe for communities. So I'm really glad that we're working with this community as well.
So the sad news, we did talk about Zen Hanika on Monday, but I just want to bring it up again. Her beautiful son, Ben, he was just 22 years old. So there is a Give, Send, Go in the show notes for those that can help. We have heard from Zen. She's so grateful to everybody, just outpouring of love and prayers and finance if you can. And so she just sent a message, and she just says, words can't describe how grateful she is to you all. And once she is ready, she will come on and talk to you all. But for now, she just needs time. So tragic. All right, let's talk about our conference. Friday, November the 7th to the 9th on Sunday. It's Moment of Truth, it's called. And we've got Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, Peter McCullough, Pierre Corey, Andy Wakefield, Leslie Mnookin, Meryl Nass, Dr. Ben Edwards, Dr. Hooker, Mary Holland, Kim Mack Rosenberg, Carl Jablowski, Catherine Austin-Fitz, and more coming. We're just firming up some of the other speakers. But very exciting, as Catherine said on Thursday, what a group of people to get into a room.
It's going to be awesome. I was just working in the last couple of days with our planners, Michael Kane and Stephanie Lucrecio, on the order and the panels, and it's going to be great. And there's going to be some amazing vendors, and there's going to be a lot of sort of informal time, but also informal time. There's going to be a party on Saturday night. We're talking with different entertainers for that, and more people are coming. There will be a lot more news by November coming out of Health and Human Services that we're going to be able to evaluate. It's going to be a really exciting time, Polly.
It is. The power of us all getting together, really important. So we really, really hope to meet and see so many of our viewers and people that have supported us for so long. So thank you. Right, so now we're going to go to our geoengineering report, and then we're going to go to our medical professional story of the day. And I will see you tomorrow on Good Morning CHD. And we have got Michelle Spencer, as I said, and a few other good people on tomorrow.
Super.
All right. So pray big, stand firm, never settle. And Mary and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Polly. Bye, everybody.
I'm Claire Dooley, you're watching CHD TV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. While media headlines are warning of crossing 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming in the next few years, the real data paints a far more urgent picture. In this segment, we unpack how climate statistics have been manipulated and why the truth is being buried. Our expert Dane reveals why we've likely already surpassed 3.5 degrees Celsius and how geoengineering is used to mask the true extent of planetary heating.
Earth may cross the key climate threshold of 1.5 Celsius in 2 years.
A headline like that is totally false, but not in the direction most people would like to believe. They've falsified data since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So what we see, and this is obvious, anybody with their functioning sense of reason should be able to figure this out. When you draw a baseline across the middle of a graph, making half of the heat escalation below the baseline, that's simply lying. And that's what they've done. So they draw the baseline graph of pre-industrial heating halfway up the chart of heating. So you're hiding half of the heating below the baseline. Does that make sense? It's an absolute lie. So where are we right now? When they talk about 1.5 C of temperature rise, which again is about a little shy of 3 degrees Fahrenheit, we're, based on unfiltered frontline data, we're past 3.5 degrees C right now. So those headlines are all absolute lies. It's the same as, it's coming from the same sources, Polly, that say what we see in our skies is just condensation. Nothing to worry about. Go back to sleep. Just a conspiracy theory. Safe and effective medical treatment. Just a conspiracy theory. Go back to sleep. Same core of power that controls media, controls these statistics. So based on unfiltered frontline data, we are past 3.5 degree C right now. And that puts us in a position where we're past what science would say allows humans to live on this planet right now. And that doesn't mean we die instantly. It's like driving out into the middle of Sahara Desert in a motorhome with a refrigerator full of food and thinking you're going to be able to sustain yourself. You can't.
We love hearing from you at CHD TV. We always are going through your emails and, sending them to each other and discussing the pictures you're sending and, whatever comments you're making. So please continue doing so. You can reach out to us at goodmorning@chd.tv. Thank you so much for watching the Geoengineering Report, and we'll see you next time on CHD TV.
Some of this technology actually came out of the stealth program. Stealth was the idea that you would try to reduce the amount of radar energy that would be reflected off of an aircraft. You could put particles of metal into the paint itself. These particles would then absorb the energy. But if you put that up into the air and then you broadcast a signal that is tuned to the exact frequency that matches the size, and this is the key, all of these particles are the same exact size, so they respond to a specific frequency. So when you transmit this frequency, you can get all those particles to heat up. And if that mass of air has moisture in it, any kind of humidity at all, it all rises and expands. So this is how you can actually generate a weather system.
A primary aspect of climate engineering is the climate engineer's ability to manufacture winter weather with patented processes of chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. In doing so, they can seed cloud moisture with what is termed endothermic reacting elements, energy absorbing elements that create a cold, dense layer of air that sinks to the surface of the planet and creates a shallow layer of cold, perhaps a few hundred feet thick, that creates the illusion of winter weather on a planet that's in total meltdown. So the surface temperatures are in fact very cold, sometimes astoundingly cold, but it's a shallow surface layer, manufacturing winter weather events that are then sensationalized by corporate media, dividing the population, again, confusing them as to the true state of the planet and the true temperatures on planet Earth. They have focused oftentimes on particular regions, like in 2014 in Boston on the east coast of the US. creating snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm with chemically nucleated moisture and creating sensationalized headlines from that event.
100 million Americans have been hit by a winter storm, packing pretty much everything in the weather arsenal.
And convincing much of the population that there was nothing wrong with the climate, that there was in fact record cold in some places, and thus in places where there was record warmth even during winter months, people tend to ignore that. As the planetary warming becomes a runaway event, the chemical ice nucleation elements that have been seeded into cloud moisture reach the surface before freezing. Thus, so-called frozen rain and ice storms are increasingly becoming the norm. How many know of the ice balls showing up on the shores of Lake Michigan, covering beaches, often 75 pounds or more, occurring at times on water that is 40 degrees plus Fahrenheit? How does that happen? From chemical ice nucleation. This is nothing short of winter weather warfare, complete with destructive ice accumulations from the chemical ice nucleation cloud seeding and dangerously slick, snow-like frozen material that contains surfactants. They're used in climate engineering chemical ice nucleation cloud seeding operations in order to reduce particle coagulation, i.e. to keep the climate engineering elements from sticking together and forming larger particulates that would sink faster to the planet, which would not be conducive to the winter weather warfare scenario. The cryosphere, Earth's ice deposits, are melting at a pace that is unprecedented in the geologic past. The true magnitude of the planetary meltdown has been masked by statistical falsification. The climate engineers have attempted to hide this fact from populations. In order to mask the true severity of polar meltdown from populations, the climate engineers have utilized methods of sea surface ice nucleation. The effect of these operations can easily be distinguished on satellite images. The paradox with sea surface ice nucleation is this. The climate engineers are actually putting a lid or a cap on oceans that are already too warm for natural ice nucleation to occur. In doing so, the climate engineers are, in effect, sealing the heat in the oceans, thus increasing the overall heating of the planet.
Okay, we're live. Tell us your name.
I'm Linda Doremo.
And what qualifications do you have?
I am a family medicine doctor. I am a certified functional medicine doctor through the Institute for Functional Medicine. And I've been practicing functional medicine for at least 10 years now. It's alternative, it's different. We look for the root cause of things, and we typically don't believe in vaccines. So that was my beginning, my road to where I am now. In 2021, I was working part-time at the VA, seeing patients there, and that was the height of, the beginning of the vaccines. And I saw a patient who had been vaccinated, and he shared his vaccine with me, and I became very, very ill. So I ended up...
What do you mean he shared his vaccine?
So he was sick, and he had the vaccine, one of the COVID vaccines, or shots, if you will, and I was asked to examine him, but we weren't seeing sick patients at the clinic at the time. So how he got in, I do not know, except he got in, and then I was evaluating him and treated him. I knew he had COVID. It was classic symptoms of the COVID virus. And then 2 weeks later, I was very, very ill. Ended up in the hospital with pericarditis and COVID lung, and given remdesivir. When I asked the doctor for ivermectin, she said, may I be candid, we don't use that shit here. I said, well, okay, fine. So I survived the remdesivir, thank God, and then immediately got home and looked up Dr. Corey's protocol for myself because I was still very sick. Put myself on ivermectin, and within 2 days I was much, much better. So I thought about that and prayed about it, and I said, what am I to do, Lord? And he said, treat, because ivermectin works. So I've been doing that since 2021, treating patients who have the shot and who have been sickened by COVID, and it's been a mission. The conventional medical world has changed so much since I started practicing medicine, and I am a non-traditional practitioner. I was older when I went to med school. I graduated med school at 50 and then started practicing, and when I started with functional medicine, I saw that the medications weren't working, but the functional medicine medications were working. So I thought, well, this is not medication, this is lifestyle change. This is eating properly, this is living properly. This is staying away from the poisons that they're all trying to give us. So in 2013, clearly seeing the handwriting on the wall, I started my practice and have been doing that since then. So today I'm thrilled to sponsor this bus on our parking lot on Polly's birthday. So happy birthday, Polly.
Thank you very much. And we're so grateful to you for housing the Children's Health Defence bus here today.
It's such a privilege, such a privilege.
One thing I've noticed about the people in your area is they're very outspoken. They don't mince their words here, do they?
No, they don't.
They've been a wonderful people to interview.
Yeah.
So, couple of questions for you. So you trained as a white coat doctor, basically. But what made you decide that you were going to go into the more holistic approach rather than
It was always
the
an
white coat?
interest.
Mm-hmm.
I had listened to a couple of pharmacists on the radio who were talking about the medications not working and not being good for you, and I thought, well, that's interesting. If pharmacists are saying this, how is this so? And I'd always been interested in medicine. So when I graduated from medical school, I thought, these guys are crazy, until I started learning, and then I could see the difference. And so it was a stark difference, you know, where diabetics were able to give up their medications because they changed their lifestyle. And that's not what the focus of conventional medicine is. And I learned that very quickly as well. I was asked to sit on a committee called the Quality Committee. And the Quality Committee was tied to what the insurance companies said the quality measure should be. And so we would be chasing these crazy things like smoking or the get up and go test when you're elderly. They do a test for elderly patients to see if they can stand up without using the arms on the chairs, and then without stopping and moving forward. And that was a quality measure, but it was a very small population, so it didn't really cover a lot. And then they would say, if you can gather this information, the insurance companies would say this, if you can gather this information, we'll give you X number of dollars. So we were all scrambling to get this information collected and this data collected. And then they would always change, they'd move the carrot away from us, you know, though, well, we've changed the measure and now you only have 2 months to get this done. So needless to say, we never ended up getting the money. And finally, after 2 years on this committee, I said, when do we start taking care of patients? And they looked at me like I had 3 heads and said, this is taking care of patients. And I disagreed. That is not taking care of patients. We weren't listening to patients. We weren't giving them the time they needed. We were just saying, take this medication and you will be just fine. Thank you very much. And so practicing functional medicine, I get to learn the whole story of the patient. And that is gratifying to see how they improve.
I have a couple of questions for you. You talked about treating someone who'd had the COVID shot and then you got sick. Do you believe that shedding is real?
I do believe shedding is real. I know that's how I got it. There was no other way. No other way. I have never been that sick in my entire life. Never. You know, and I thought, well, maybe I have pneumonia. I have a little chest pain. And I was out of it completely.
How would you recommend, and nobody's giving out medical advice, Children's Health Defence do not do it, and nor are you right now, but how would you what would you suggest to do if you're around someone that's been vaccinated, suddenly you don't feel very well? What would be the first thing that you would suggest to do if you were talking to your daughter or something?
So if I was talking to my daughter, well, I don't have
daughter,
a daughter, but
daughter. I'm just trying to make it so that
okay.
it's a family thing.
So I would say if they felt they were around somebody and they were not feeling well, to rinse with iodine and water or hydrogen peroxide and water mixture, cleanse their nasal passages, gargle with it. I would suggest some vitamins that support the immune system. I would suggest having on hand all of these things that you might need, being prepared. Even ivermectin, being prepared with ivermectin and even hydroxychloroquine, and seeking good advice from somebody who's willing to listen to them. Make sure they're being heard. And if they're not being heard, keep asking. Keep going to different doctors or information.
I'm a little concerned on our journey so far on this bus about the hospital protocol deaths. Not a little concerned, extremely concerned. How do we, which makes me absolutely petrified for anyone that I know and love to go anywhere near a hospital. How do we know when we do need help and when we can actually, because there's that fear, panic thing, isn't there?
It is.
If I can't breathe, am I panicking? I don't know what's happening. I'm watching Fauci talking nonsense, all that kind of stuff. Can't breathe. I'm going to die. I'm going to go to the ER. Seems to me like a lot of people, yes, they were sick, but there was also an element of panic.
A huge element of panic, because that's what was fomented. That's what was spread, was fear. Somebody just gave me a card that says fear is a liar. Mm-hmm. So I think take a step back, take a breath, get some good counsel, get people around you, really examine what is it that you need to know. There's so much more information out there now than there was at the beginning. At the beginning, we were just hearing canned statements from a few sources, because nobody really knew what was going on until it unraveled. And then I think we learned a lot more. When Dr. Corey stepped forward and started talking about ivermectin and how well it was working, and Dr. Merrick, and they testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Health, and they made such impassioned presentations. And these were brilliant ICU and pulmonologist physicians who were saving lives. I think to take a step back and really just take a moment and find some peace and actually get some help from somebody who may be helpful. Ask around. That's very non-specific. Wow. You know what? Epsom salt baths. I'm going to throw that in there. Oh, that's a good one. But make sure that Epsom salts, people, are clean. No perfumes and nonsense in it. The cheapest Epsom salts are the best, actually. Right, with no lavender or anything. Yeah, you don't want any of that nonsense in there. Right. So that's an excellent one, actually. Very good. Elderberry is wonderful too. Elderberry syrup. Oh, there are so many other wonderful ones. Honey, garlic, all those kinds of things. Also, when we got sick in the Tommey household, we had a friend who's a doctor give us a glutathione nebulizer, and I don't know whether that's good or bad, but that's really helped us out. It helped. So for certain strains, it does help. The other thing that really helps is Pepsid. I don't know what that is. So Pepsid is an antihistamine. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt was sharing that information in December of 2021. And he was saying, take Pepsid as an antihistamine because it will stop all of the congestion in the sinuses. Benadryl was working. Zyrtec was working. And so these are over-the-counter medications, and so these things can actually be helpful as well. Well, so now just to remind everyone, we are definitely not giving out medical advice. We're having a little chit-chat on things that have helped us in our lives. Absolutely. Take what you want from it. It's definitely not the views of Children's Self Defense and all that blah. Right. Exactly. And your clinic here. So as we're time's up, but just what's your one last thing you want to tell the world as we approach the fall and winter? Be ready just be prepared. Have everything that you need on hand, whether it's a nebulizer, whether it's elderberry, whether it's honey, whether it's vitamin D, vitamin C, any of these things. Hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, hydrogen peroxide, povidone iodine to do the cleansing of the sinuses and things like that. Epsom salts. Just have some basic things on hand. Even baking soda with pink Himalayan salt, a bath, will help draw the toxins.
That's interesting. And I think this winter there's definitely going to push this RSV. The babies are going to be the target, and those parents, you're going to be in so much fear with all the crazy stuff on TV and stuff.
That's right.
So please be careful, because I think we're going to hear a lot of terrible
Absolutely.
baby toddler stories this
Look
winter.
alternatively, because there are a lot of us out there. Look alternatively and be heard. Make sure you're heard, and don't stop until you're heard.
And don't forget the brilliantness, if there's such a word, of brilliantness of chiropractors.
That's right. They're very helpful.
Very helpful.
Absolutely.
Well, this was fun. And what is your dog called?
Angel.
Okay, Angel, you've been a very good little girl. And
Sweet.
and guys, we've got some more stories coming up. We are not finished today.